on page 308, towards the bottom, he says, in another 10 years, Goggle Gungloo will be that age. He wonders if he will be married again one day, if he will ever have a child to name. A month from now, he will begin a new job at a smaller architectural practice, producing his own designs. There is a possibility, eventually, of becoming an associate of the firm, incorporating his name. And in that case, Nikhil will live on publicly, celebrated, unlike Goggle, purposely hidden, legally diminished, now all but lost. And the way he kind of says that makes me feel like he has grown more of an appreciation for his original name, just because he wouldn't have spoke like that way about his name, like worried about his original name being lost if he did value it at least a little bit more than he used to. Because the way he used to talk about it, he would be glad if no one ever called him that name again. But now I think because he's kind of grown an appreciation for his name and his culture, he is almost sad that it could potentially fade into obscurity, that there won't be anyone in his life to call him by that name. And he also kind of talks the same way about like the party he's having at the end of like, will he see any of these people again? So I do think he gained at least a little more of an appreciation for his name and his culture now that he's kind of grown up and matured.
I totally agree with that. Like, I think there's like a sense of regret there almost, and I wonder if his father had told him like the story behind his name when he was a bit younger, if he would have ever actually changed his name. Like if he would have taken it as like, oh, I remind my father of like this horrible thing that happened to him, or if he would have been more honored by it. I don't know how that could have changed the book.
Kind of like adding on to what I guess Ben was saying about him growing more appreciation for his culture as he grows up, and also just more appreciation for the life that he has with his family. At the end of the book on page 309 is kind of that paragraph where he's like in his room imagining what's going to happen when his mom walks in, and it just is like breathing familiarity. But also, at the very end of the page, it says, until moments ago, it was destined to disappear from his life altogether. But he had established professions as his father was forced from his trained ways. He leaned his back against the headboard, adjusting his bow behind his back. As he would go downstairs to join the party with his family, but for now his mother was distracted. Back around his story, his friend is telling her, unaware of his son's absence, and now he starts to read. To me, it kind of like represents, almost in a sense, he's not only talking about the book, but he's also talking about the life that he shares with his family. And like, I guess tacking onto the theme of worlds that we were talking about was kind of been represented throughout the whole book. He's talking about how he almost lost this world that his family has been working so hard to create for him, and this life that he shared with them, that he salvaged it, even though a tragedy did have to happen for that.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about that as well, like connecting to you. If we go all the way back to page 235, just gonna kind of use that. 235, just sort of in the middle, bottom middle. His mother just says, you know, his blessings are always with you, and that's his father, right? And I think this is just an extremely important quote because, like you said, I think without the death of his father, he wouldn't have been able to accept that or come back to the world of his family, like you said, Seneca. And I also think that he wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to meet Mashumi. And even though it ended up being a tragic relationship and something tragic happened, I think it was a good experience for him because he got to meet someone who is just like him, who has gone through the same things, right? Who has been, I guess, not bullied, but made fun of because of their name and where they came from in school, right? And I think without his father, you know, none of that would have happened. He would have never come back to his culture. And I think even though, like I said, Mashumi was a tough relationship, he would have never come back to his culture if he never got in a relationship with her in the first place.
Yeah, I think, yeah, even though it ended not that well, it was like important for him because he's always felt so isolated in his life for his culture, because he's just been like surrounding himself with like white people and trying to push that part of himself away. And like when he did end up getting a relationship with her and having like the traditional like Indian wedding and all of that stuff, I think, I don't know, it was an important part for him to learn and to grow, and for the end of the book.
Yeah, I really think that relationship really changed how I thought about him, and just like the overall throughout the book. It changed how I thought about his culture, and I think like this book would be really boring if he just stuck with Maxine and like stayed away from his family the whole time. Like I really just would have gotten more with that.
I totally agree. The part that kind of confused me, this is kind of switching the subjects a little bit, but like the backstories in the book always kind of confused me, and I don't know why. Like the part with Moshimi and what's his face, Dimitri, like I didn't, because it went back and forth so much between like her knowing him when she was younger and like the present day, I didn't realize that she had like actually had an affair until like the start of the next chapter when Goggle's like, oh, she wasn't like in bed this morning, and it just kind of confused me. Like I really like this book, but the way it's written kind of irks me a little bit.
I agree with that, and the and to like 227.
27?
Yep. Yep. And
Where
on when it says like when he held onto her British accent for as long as she could. And that made me think of like why did she come up with that? Like she made she didn't feel feel like an American, and she also doesn't feel like Bengali either. I just think that's a little strange, but that's just me.
Well, I love what Zoe said. So when Moshimi first meets Dimitri, and it says on page 275, Dimitri says, "We're going to break hearts, you know," and then it just moving forward on page 300. Moshimi says, Dimitri says, Sienna is something of a fairy tale, and that's when Google asks Moshimi about Dimitri, and it kind of makes me think that, you know, Dimitri was right. She broke Google's heart.
Yeah, there's a lot of foreshadowing in this book. It's really interesting to hear. Also, I wanted to talk about like when Moshimi blurts out that like Nikhil changed his name when he was younger, about like the whole. It's on 259, and then I went over to like 260. But it was kind of just like a very exposing moment. It's right at the end of 259. It was like an exposing moment for Google. Yeah. Nikhil changed his name, Motion blurts out suddenly, and for the first time all evening, with the exception of the opera singers, the room goes completely quiet. He stares at her stunned. He has never told her not to tell anyone. He simply assumed she never would. His expression is lost on her. She smiles back at him, unaware of what she's done. The dinner guests regard him, their mouths hanging open in confused smiles. "What do you mean he changed his name?" Blake asks slowly. "Nikhil, it wasn't his name when he was born. It wasn't the name he was born with." She nods.
her mouth full, tossing a clamshell onto the table. It's not his name when we were kids. What name were you born with, Ashton says, looking at him suddenly, suspiciously, her eyebrows furrowed for effect. For a few seconds he says nothing. Gogol, he finally says. It has been years since he's been Gogol. It's been years since he's been Gogol to anyone other than his family, their friends. It sounds as it always does, simply impossible, absurd. He stares at Moshimi and as he says it, but she's too drunk to absorb his reproach. And I was just like, it's definitely, now reading like the entire book, it was kind of a foreshadowing of her almost betrayal to him in a way. It's very exposing. He feels that his name Gogol is such a personal part of him. Obviously, it's like his family name. And she just puts it out there for everyone to hear without any second thought about how he feels about it. And that's kind of how she went through her affair with Dimitri.
Yes,
Okay, especially because like Dimitri, a big part of his appeal to her was that he was like representing a different world that she no longer felt connected to. And when she kind of exposed Gogol, she was exposing him to like make her like higher class friends feel impressed and like make them feel more connected to her in a way and like make him seem more interesting even though he didn't ask her to do that. So I feel like it really is foreshadowing because that's really much like Dimitri.